Okay, so number 7, looking about your preliminary task, what have you learnt in the progression from it to your final product? I'm going to address this question in this video. Now, the first thing I really want to talk about is different ways you can present the media, so media techniques. I'm going to start off with eyeline match, and it's a technique that's really used to show what people are looking at in shots. So for example, you've got a first person, big eyes, and they're looking at something, and then in the second shot you have the next thing. So we really use this in our final film. We used it in situations, for example, where Paulie's looking at Chantal, and then she's looking at him, and then he looks back. We look in our preliminary task where Emily was at the door. In our final film when Sylvia looks at the barkeeper, but we didn't continue that, and we just cut it off. So I also looked at shot reverse shot, and we learnt how to show mainly a discussion between people. So for example, the mum with the moustache and the man with the top hat, don't know why they're both upper class, but they are. And so you go 1, 2, and then back to the 2, and it kind of gives the idea of them talking to each other, occupying the same time space, things like that. And it's also linked with over the shoulder shot. Not quite sure what I'm drawing again here. It looks like a man with a melon, but it is a man, and then the focus of the shot is over his shoulder, and it again links with conversation. So here I showed that in our preliminary task, the second one, where Holly's talking to Will. So of course over his shoulder, over her shoulder, and again it's cutting backwards and forwards between the two. We also use this in our final film with Maurice and Paulie. So now the 180-degree rule is something else we learnt, and if two people are talking to each other like we've just seen in a conversation, there's an imaginary line, and you can only really do shots on one side of the line. Actually in our film it's more of a kind of setup like that. So you have a shot from here, a shot from here, a shot from there, and then we try to do a shot from there of this frame, which would be X. It's this frame coming up just here. But as you can see here, wait for it, this one, we flipped the shot just to keep it all in control with the 180-degree rule. Something else we really looked at was music and sound. And just focus the camera. There we go. It was really important. It was hard to get it right, actually. It took us a lot of attempts to get the music right. The sound, we did it so many times that we reverted back to the original because we thought that was best, even though it was a little bit quiet. And we learned a lot about the recording equipment, and you can probably see in our preliminary task the quality of the sound. Thank you, Holly, for that laugh. That was great. So something else we really had to look at was camera work. Because of course we use the Steadicam in this production, we use the dolly in the other production, both of which pieces that we haven't used before. And that brings up the debate of manual focus versus automatic focus. And for the preliminary task, this was on automatic focus, and of course the camera kept changing what it wanted to focus on. For our real project, we went on to the auto. Yeah, we tried the manual focus, but of course it didn't quite understand what we wanted it to do, so we went on to autofocus. And because the distance between the camera and Sylvia kept changing, it worked a lot better, I think, even though that kind of goes against what we learnt. For example, here, this footage isn't very good, but you can kind of see he's always in shot, in focus, which worked well. Lighting is something else we really had to work on. It was important because, you know, it's kind of controls the mood to the scene. In our first preliminary task, we wanted dark in our ambience, but we decided that it would be easier to record with bright lights and put a filter over it instead. We used a lot of filters actually to get the correct kind of tone we wanted. Also linked with colour matching that we did. For example, passing different light sources. So here, very dark tracking shot of Jasmine. And then here we've gone for a bright tracking shot of the actor Tristan. See how you get the odd bit of camera flare when you walk into the room. We wanted a lot of lighting. So we also looked at props. maybe in Reservoir Dogs we could have had a few little different bits of, scenery just to make it look realistic, which is what we aimed for in our final piece. We couldn't really ask them to take the Christmas decorations down because we've already got the room for free, so we didn't really want to be pushy. But the big knife and everything, that all added well to the effect. And of course the fact that there were all the people eating breakfast, all the buffet, the people at the bar, all of that kind of stuff just made it look a lot more real. So linking that kind of with what we've learnt before, positioning of props, and then of course making everything the same all the time, sort of continuity. It had to be right. It had to be the same. So it took a little bit to reset everything after a take. So all in all, what have I learnt from this little expedition we've done? Well, I learned a lot about planning, how to plan things, how to optimise time. I learned how to work with Ollie, who actually was really good, and he always had great ideas. When it came to editing, we just had to try and put those into practice, and it took a little bit of time sometimes. We sometimes had conflicting ideas, but maybe that's the best part of it. We learned a lot about Max, we learned a lot about how to make something professional, and I think that you can definitely see the progression from our preliminary tasks, such as the Reservoir Dogs, which copy the opening, the first one and the second one talking about dialogue. You can see how it's improved. Maybe that shows that we've learnt a lot throughout this course. So goodbye.